if I wanted to be a great drummer, I needed to play drums every day for like
Right.
2 to 4 hours, which
Right.
some people are like, that's insane. Like, how can you always be feeling drums? No, you're not always feeling drums. This is what you have to do to be really good.
Right.
It's the same
Right.
thing with music, you know. Yeah, sometimes you're really feeling the writing process and making those lyrics and stuff, but I recommend to people that you schedule out time to go and practice your music, work on your music, do that kind of stuff, and it makes huge dividends when you come to the studio. I can genuinely tell when people come in and they practice, regularly outside of the studio. The people who come
Right.
in have fantastic flow and honestly get more out of their time because they're the ones who
Right.
come in and record like once or twice and they're like, okay, I'm done. And then we can spend the
Right.
rest of the time mixing and mastering. Um,
Right.
so that's definitely very big.
All right, welcome everybody. Hope you're having a wonderful day. My name again is Kevin from Music with Flavor, where we help you taste success within the music industry. I have another special guest here today who I'm excited to chat with. I've spoken to him briefly. We're hoping to have a candid discussion to learn more about him and what he's doing on his in his neck of the woods there in terms of helping artists. So I'd like to give a warm welcome to Nathan Williams of Artistic Elevation. How
Hey
you doing?
guys, doing good,
Awesome,
man, doing
awesome.
good. Thanks for having me on.
No, pleasure, pleasure. No, I'm excited to learn more about like what you guys are doing over there. I know I had someone you guys have contact with in Jonay, but I wanted to chat with you further to see what you guys are up to and how you guys are helping artists. So, what to start it off, I'd love to learn more about yourself and what got you into music, essentially.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think with everybody, there's some, smaller thing to it. And for me, it
Right.
all just started with playing drums. It was really fun. It was just
Gotcha.
a small hobby thing that I got into. And
Right.
then I went to college and I started studying marketing and talking more seriously with my friends about, what musicians really needed. And the fact that as we were, making music, we always thought that it'd be so cool to be a band or to be a popular musician or something like that, because to
Right.
make a living off of music, I think, is something that's really special, but that's also really
Right.
hard to do. So we started talking about maybe ways that we could support artists to really make that happen. And that's kind of what birthed our company and made us get into it. Yeah.
Nice, nice. So I noticed there's a few of you that's a part of this, right?
hmm
Can you talk maybe more about your team and who's here helping you as well?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So, most of the time I get to go and talk with people, get to know people, but I'm really not the talented music person. Um,
Mhm.
I have two other partners, Bradley and Will. Will is our engineer for our studio. He comes in and that guy can do some serious work. I mean, it's
Yeah.
crazy. I think the other day we had someone come in who made a song with us, recorded vocals, and Will mixed and mastered his song in like
Mhm.
40 minutes or something, which is insane. If you're an engineer, you'll understand that that's crazy.
Right,
And
right,
then there's Bradley, and he's more of our production guy. So he makes those beats, he gets people that exact sound that they're looking for.
right.
And a lot of what they focus on is personalization, making that sound come to life in the way that the artist is really looking for.
Nice, nice. No, that's awesome. Obviously, you need a team, and especially in that little
Yes.
environment as well. Like to have those guys with the skill set that they excel at. That's totally
Yeah.
that's perfect, essentially.
Mhm.
And yeah, essentially, can you speak to more? So it's more the studio aspect, and obviously, then do you offer other services as well for artists in terms of helping them outside of that?
Yeah. So, with our services and stuff like that, our goal is genuinely to help them in the way that they need the most. And so that's
Right.
to utilize each of our skill sets as much as possible, like you were saying. And so,
hmm
yes, we do offer those studio things where it's like, okay, do you need engineering? Do you need recording? Do you need production? All that stuff is super important. But then on the back end, I come in and I can help artists do consultation on their marketing, social media is also such a big thing today for getting your
Right.
music out there. So every now and then I'll talk through with people and show them what they can do, or I offer things like, setting up ads to run and run
Hmm.
effectively. So you hit those
Right.
demographics so that you really get the most out of your money. So yeah, we
Right.
definitely do offer some other things like that. But in the end, I mean, it's really just about getting people what they need because most
Right.
people already have one aspect of it down.
Right.
So yeah. Mhm.
No, that makes sense. And yeah, especially in today's day and age, it's pretty much self-explanatory that you have to, market yourself out
Yeah.
there and use the tools. Or if a tree falls in the woods and no one's there, I mean, you know what I mean? It's no one's gonna
Yeah.
hear it, kind of thing, right? So, but no, and that's totally makes sense of giving people what they need. Um, and I like the aspect that you have those options for them, but it's come to me, let me know what you need, and we'll go from there. But yeah, with that, I know everyone's probably cliche, but the pandemic, has that, you're in Texas, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, has that had a huge impact on your business and what you guys have been doing? Or how would you say that's kind of helped with the transition, I guess?
You know, it's to an extent really actually very hard to say
Yeah.
because, we started last September,
Okay.
um, and kind of brought all of our skills and specialties together.
Hmm.
Um, and so as a company, we're relatively young, so it's hard to say really how much, our client base was affected because of the pandemic.
Right.
But um, to an extent, I don't think we would have started the company if it wasn't for the pandemic because I think
Mm.
we were just itching to do something and to, help people out. And I think that just kind of nurtured a desire to do something new and stuff like that. And then
Right.
after that, it really pushed us to, do things a little bit differently, I guess, and do more of an online outreach, focusing on that, social media marketing, getting to
Right.
know people out there. Um, it's a very different environment. I feel like the music industry is normally, who you know. And
Right.
because we didn't know a lot of people, it's become how do we get to know people? And so the pandemic
Right.
has changed that from maybe going to events or concerts or linking up with people to reaching out on social media websites and really getting to
Right.
know people through meetings or things like that. Things just like this, video meetings and stuff like
Exactly.
that is huge. Hmm.
Right. Yeah, no, that's such a huge thing. I think too is like before, like you talk about events, like, those huge conventions or like those
Yeah.
CD Baby, yeah, like all those things. You would think that you'd have to spend all that money. I have to fly out, or if I want to bring someone in to talk, like I have to fly them in, and
Hmm.
the expense of that. So there just always seemed like there was this, separation between that actually happening. Whereas now it just seems like you are able to make a stronger connection, just
Hmm.
because of necessity to be like, hey, I need to reach out and talk to this person and just have this conversation over Zoom or
Yeah.
whatever it might be. So no, that definitely makes sense, and how that can just catapult you into doing something like. Maybe if the pandemic didn't happen, do you maybe start this? Are you still toying with the idea, right? So,
Yeah.
no, that's definitely cool. Because other than that, I mean, with your guys's services, and I feel like the main point of focus is to keeping costs low, kind of thing, for artists,
Mm.
and making it reasonable. What would you say, just in your opinion, as like artists starting out, shoestring budget? What would you feel like should be their main priority, trying to grow their music if they're just starting out, kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah. And just to preface that a little bit, I know you know it, Kevin, but that is
Yeah.
a lot of where we came from was
Right.
that we also created our company, like I was saying, because we wanted to help people.
Right.
But, those resources, the resources that we offer, honestly, they're out there, but
Right.
they're out there for like twice as much as we charge and stuff like that.
Right.
So it's not viable for starting out artists. And you know that, but,
Right.
just to preface that. Um, but yeah, no, it's completely true. A lot of people starting out, um, I wouldn't recommend that you go to like the biggest studio that you can or whatever, because you know you got to grow first. You got to grow into that and learn how to be really good. And maybe someday that's going to be worth it. But right now, it's
Right.
probably not.
Right.
But if I was to choose an aspect, I
Right.
think that as I go and listen through people's music and stuff like that, the most neglected thing is engineering, especially, the mixing side of things. I think that
Right.
is so, so important. I know lots of people who will, because you can go out, you can buy a nice mic and get like
Hmm.
pretty decent recordings of yourself and stuff like that. And it's not terribly hard, but the
Right.
engineering side of things takes lots of experience, and you need someone who's been doing it for at least,
Wow.
a few years to get a good sound out of it, or
Right.
someone who's educated in that field. So that's definitely the thing that I would be like, if you are going to invest some amount of money into like a good engineer, I would
Hmm.
be like, yeah, that's actually worth your time, because that's going to make your music sound so much better. And then, because on my side of things, like, yeah, I could say like marketing is super important, and it is. But if you come out with a really bad product, you don't have anything to market. You
Right.
can put
Right.
as much money at it as you want, but as soon as people see it, they're going to go, okay, and they're going to scroll by or whatever. It's got to catch them and really be impressive. And that's, I think, where
Right.
that engineering comes in.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense because I think a lot of times, especially now, like there's so much information thrown at you, and whether that's on like this mixing or creation side, but more so it seems like the marketing because that just the buzzwords to get artists'
Hmm.
attention and things like that. But it's so true. If you don't have a good product, if you don't spend the time and work on your craft, um, what are you marketing at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
So I totally agree with you on that side of things, and obviously keeping costs low for artists. I've my past experience, I remember going to a pretty intensive studio from the get go, and it was kind of intimidating to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
You're clock watching because you don't have as much time, and it kind of affects the creativity, right? You're kind of
Hmm.
tense sometimes, so uh, definitely being comfortable is something I also think is important when you're going into those
Yeah.
situations, and not worrying about, oh crap, like there's another, how much this is going to cost for another
Yeah.
hour or whatever it might be. Definitely
Hmm.
is a weight off the shoulders for sure. So um, with regards to, I'm sure you worked on various projects. Uh, you know, what's your experience been like working alongside a lot of these talented artists, and what's maybe the hardest lesson you've learned in terms of people's creative process, dealing with so many different people, right, and being in the studio and how people create kind of thing.
Um, well, I kind of want to answer that on two sides. I kind of
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
answer it on the musician side and then like a personal business side. On the
Mhm.
musician side, with that creative process, that's such an important thing to music, to be passionate.
Mhm.
And I think, I even though I'm not a fantastic musician, I still am a
Yeah,
musician, so I get it. Like,
right.
there are times in my life where I'm like, man, I'm gonna go make a song or something like that, and you're just really feeling it, and you get into it,
Hmm.
and you can knock something out, and it sounds fantastic or whatever. But on the
Right.
other side of things, you really can't count on that all the time. And,
Mhm.
music really wasn't where I decided to go with my life. But if I wanted to, I would need to be so much more consistent and really getting myself in there. If I wanted to be a great drummer, I need to play drums every day for like
Right.
2 to 4 hours, which
Right.
some people are like, that's insane. Like, how can you always be feeling drums? No, you're not always feeling drums. This is what you have to do to be really good.
Right.
It's the same
Right.
thing with music. Yeah, sometimes you're really feeling the writing process and making those lyrics and stuff, but I recommend to people that you schedule out time to go and practice your music, work on your music, do that kind of stuff, and it makes huge dividends when you come to the studio. I can genuinely tell when people
Mhm.
come in and they practice, regularly outside of the studio. The people who come
Right.
in have fantastic flow and honestly get more out of their time, because they're the ones who
Right.
come in and record like once or twice and they're like, okay, I'm done. And then we can spend the
Right.
rest of the time mixing and mastering. Um,
Right.
so that's definitely very big. From a more of a business standpoint, what I've learned from the kind of process of working with musicians and stuff like that is just to kind of, it's actually kind of the flop side of that is to try and
Right.
keep them consistent, keep up with them, ask them how they've been doing, stuff like that to develop a connection. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with it. Like, we should be keeping each other accountable and helping each other to accomplish our goals. And so that's
Right.
something that I get to do. And it's cool because I also get to hear people's music and what they're working on, and we get to give them advice and be like, I really like this aspect, but maybe work on this one a little bit more. And we get to
Right.
be a part of their creative process as well.
Right. I think you made a lot of great points there in terms of that last point is that comfortability factor I talk about is even that in the sense of is that person you're working with in the studio willing to make a suggestion, or are
Oh
they
my gosh,
scared to
yeah.
step in toes? You know what I mean? Like having that comfortability, like, whether you're friends or not, but to at least say, hey, I think maybe you should try this, or, maybe go in
Yeah.
this direction, or like you're saying, pushing them to do better. It's very, very important for sure. So I get what the dynamic you're talking about
Yeah.
there on that side. And then also the preparation factor. Yeah, 100% coming to the studio prepared. Um, Not that I want you to throw anyone under the bus, but do you have any maybe etiquette tips for people who maybe are never use the studio kind of thing and they're thinking of going? Or I'm sure you have a list for sure, but
um, that is absolutely one of them is come prepared. And
yeah,
that's really not an etiquette thing for us. It's really a
mhm,
self etiquette thing. It's like, if you want to
right,
show up and spend your 2 hours re-recording the same line over and over, you can do that. It's your time.
right,
But we
right,
want to see you succeed. And so,
right,
yeah, like if you ever go to a studio, if you ever come to our studio, definitely be prepared.
right,
Something else that I know that some of our musicians do, and I think normally helps them, is making those almost like practice recordings. Just get out your phone and get the beat and or whatever you're going to sing along with and record it.
mhm,
And that way you can see how it sounds. And then when you come in here, it's only going to sound better. You know,
right,
you move up from there.
right,
But realistically, the number one etiquette thing, and I, it is the creative industry. But I think that a big thing that sets apart a good musician for me to work with, contrasted with,
mhm,
you know, a poor one or someone who's not doing very well, is just consistency. And when you say you're going to do something, you do it. It's
mhm,
really small, but it makes such a big
right,
difference. If you sign up for studio time, show up. If you said you're going to meet
right,
up with someone, show up to that meeting, because every
right,
time that you don't do that, you put a bad taste in their mouth. And now you're not marketing yourselves. You're marketing yourselves as someone that they don't ever want to work with again, someone that they're
right,
not interested in your career. Um, and that's not just for me. That's for
mhm,
like anybody that you're working with in the music industry, because
right,
your network is such an important thing. And if your network doesn't like you, you're
yeah,
probably not going to get very far.
right, right.
So yeah, I would definitely say that is like the number one thing.
Right, right. I saw something else recently from a friend I've actually interviewed before, Patrice
Hmm.
Coakley, and yeah, she mentioned on one of her recent posts about to go to that, like even replying to emails, like
Oh
stuff
my
like
gosh,
that,
yeah.
like how many artists have maybe a contact in their for booking, or when you reach out to it and you don't, it's just radio silence, right? So
Hmm.
little things like that where opportunities are missed. But yeah, no, that's totally true. There's so many things that we could go through. And like I said, I don't want you to throw anyone under the bus that maybe you're working with. But it is interesting to see some people's, no one's the same. I think some people, for inspiration, they need a big environment in the studio. They want
Yeah,
their friends in there. They want, and other people are just, I want to be reserved, laid back. I need to focus. I don't want any
hmm,
distractions. So
so
um,
true.
that can be tough depending on too, like if, the way you are, working with these people and how you want to work, you kind of maybe have to adapt to their situations as well and what they want to sometimes. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
um, yeah, in terms of maybe
absolutely.
some advice, what would you say is like the best piece of advice you've gotten from like a music standpoint that stuck with you along your journey within the music industry?
Hmm. That's a really good question. Um, I feel like, I mean, I'd hate to be like a broken record, but I
Yeah.
really do
Well, it's
feel
fine.
like it is just that consistency.
Yeah, yeah.
Coming back and create some sort of schedule for yourself.
Mm,
So, so important. Like,
yeah.
it just, I don't know. I feel like as I've, you know, established my musical skills, what little they are, you go and you watch people on YouTube or whatever who are way better than you. I like to watch, a few drummers, and they're
Hmm.
insanely good, of course, because
Right.
they play for all these big bands and stuff. But they always say, like, this is, if you want to be good, this is what I do every day. And you go and you watch guitarists and bassists, and they say, this is what I do every day. It's like
Right.
dedication to your work is so, so important. If you
Right.
can stick with it, even if you're not great now, you can get there. For some people, it's going to take a little bit more time. Like, that's
Right.
just the reality of it. Some people pick things up faster. But, it doesn't matter if you're naturally talented or not, whether you believe in that or not. But, the person with 10,000 hours is going to be way better than the person starting out. So the
Right.
faster you can get that 10,000 hours in, which they say is, the amount of time that it takes to really master something, the better off you are.
Right.
Because then you're honing your skill and then you really have mastered it. And, I've listened to a lot of music of
Mm,
artists in the Houston area and people we've worked with. And you can tell who is dedicated to their craft, who puts in the time, and who is scheduled, and who, really stays consistent, and who is
yeah.
just like passionately driven and, maybe looking for just fame or recognition or something like that. They're not passionate about their music. It's not just about the
Right.
music. So yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think coming back to what you were mentioning before on the consistency side too was the 2 to 4 hours a day and not always
Oh yeah.
feeling like I want to do this, and that's I think the tough thing that people maybe delve with is
Yeah.
the reality of that. It might come like seem like a job some days
Yeah.
because you're not feeling happy or excited to go do this. You don't have the motivation to do it. But I think that's the differentiating factor of, okay, what do you do in those moments, right? When you're not feeling like doing it.
Yeah.
And I know it's, like you said, you don't want to speak cliche, but the reality is there's no real secrets out there. These people at those levels are telling you, hey, this is what I
Yes.
do, right? So
Hmm.
it's just a matter of, like you said, showing up and doing it, right? So, but yeah, you mentioned a lot of artists that you've worked with as well in the Texas area because you guys are it's Houstonish, right?
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
the
We're
yeah, right. Okay,
Houston, North Houston, Conroe based. Hmm.
cool, cool. I'm just curious, is there any other artists that you're excited about that you're working with, or that you've worked with in the past that to name drop a few, I guess. Yeah.
um, you know, Let me see. It was last Friday. We
Mhm,
worked with this guy. I think his Instagram handle is Cal underscore forever, if I'm correct.
mhm.
But that
Okay.
guy is crazy good. Super, no one's going to be like, oh, it's him because he's
Hmm.
still underground. But that guy was crazy good. Like he came in and we were just
Right.
blown away.
Yeah.
I think that was some of the most efficient and good work we've ever seen.
Okay.
Like you were saying, some people like to work differently and do different things. So he
Right.
comes in and we produced a beat for him in about 40 minutes, which
Mhm.
we were very happy with. That was really fast. Normally does take longer than that, honestly.
Right.
But he got
Right.
the sound that he wanted and we made it for him. And, while we were making that beat, he wrote lyrics for the song, got in the booth. I'm pretty sure he ran it like twice and nailed it on the second
Okay.
time, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
like I talk about practicing before you come into the studio. There's no practice when you write the lyrics in the studio.
Right in the studio.
He
Yeah.
nailed it in there, came out, and we mixed and mastered it all in 2 hours, which does
Oh
not
wow.
normally happen ever.
Right.
But yeah, that guy's super talented. Go check him out. He does also, if you're looking for inspiration as a musician, he's a fantastic person because he does have that consistency. Every week
Gotcha.
he does this type of, kind of podcast episodes called Out of the Blue, where every week
Okay.
he sits down and he forces himself to either make a new song, do a remix, or some sort of thing like that, or do a cover. And I think that's
Right.
so genius because it's a way to keep him consistent,
Right.
and it kind of just gives him this sense of responsibility to his followers, to his fans, and now he's
Hmm.
accountable because he's
Right.
said every week I'm gonna do this, and he does it every
Right.
week. Every week it's something cool, it's different, and it pushes the limits of his musical talent.
Right.
So yes, definitely go check him out. I
Cool.
think
Cool.
he's just a great musician.
Awesome. What kind of music does he make? Is it
So he's a rapper, but he does more
okay?
like kind of soul beats. Um, Really cool like style. I would say a little bit more chill, but he still of course has a range of stuff. And
Gotcha.
I think he'll
Gotcha.
be dropping an album here pretty soon, within the next month. I'm pretty excited for
Gotcha.
it. He had some great stuff in there.
Cool. Cool. No, that's cool. It's like a forced savings kind of thing. But when you add it in the factor of other people who are, like you're saying, counting on you and
Yeah,
like depending on that content or expecting that content, um, it forces you like to be accountable and make sure you put that stuff out there. And I think too sometimes artists are scared to take that step, right? To even do that, to say, hey, I'm
yeah,
gonna commit to this, because what if I mess up or what if it's not as good? But I'm sure throughout some of those they're not always maybe as great, but over time they're just naturally just getting better because you're just sharpening your sword. So
yeah,
no, that's
absolutely.
awesome. Would you, want to dive into any other topics from like a marketing standpoint? Um, when it comes to, everything, there's so much information out there. There's so much different technology out there. It can be
Hmm.
overwhelming for artists, especially as you're starting out. What would your advice be, in terms of different techniques for marketing or, what artists' focus should be when it comes to marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always happy to talk about that. It's
Yeah.
easy to talk about, and I think it's so important to talk about as well.
Mhm.
There's obviously certainly a lot of methods that you can take to go the marketing route. Um,
Mhm.
to take some extremes, yeah, you can go to a label and they will market you and do all that information for you and stuff. It
Mhm.
also might screw you over, but that's
Right.
another topic. Um,
Yeah.
and then you have other stuff where it's like, yeah, you can do paid ads yourself. Um, there's kind of in-person word of mouth, more so marketing of being sure that you're showing up at events, stuff like
Right.
that. There's organic marketing through if you have your own website, stuff like that, and of course social media. Being consistent on there is huge. Um,
Right.
and then I feel like one other thing that just kind of has to be mentioned is this recent trend of buying followers and buying likes and stuff like that. I mean, if you basically do any amount of research, it's really not worth anything. The whole idea is like, okay, well, I'm going to do this. And then it's almost like buying clout. People are like,
Right.
oh, well, what's supposed to happen is people are supposed to go, oh, wow, they're so good. I should
Mhm.
follow this person because if they have this many followers, they must be great.
Right.
But realistically, you're not really getting the people who want to follow you. They're not true fans. They don't care
Mhm.
about your music that much. So
Right.
even if that does work, even if you do get people who are following you, they're following
Mhm.
you because you're big, not because they love your music. So I
Right.
I never recommend that people do that.
Right.
And then I kind of feel like this is something that's not mentioned very much in the marketing field of music,
Mhm.
but playlists. I mean, if you can get yourself on a Spotify playlist, that's huge. Like,
Right.
from my understanding, I think Rap Caviar is still the biggest Spotify playlist. And I mean, Spotify holds the majority of the market in the US for music
Right.
streaming. So if you're trying to make money off of streams and not live performances, you can go onto Spotify. You can go to Spotify for artists and be sure that you pitch one of your songs to them
Right.
every time that you release. And you can pitch, I think it's once every 4 weeks or once, it's basically once a month.
Right.
Um, and so with that, sometimes what I try and recommend people to do is like, okay, if you don't have a big following,
Mhm.
it might be more important to release singles and give yourself more opportunities to get onto a Spotify playlist because then you can pitch once a month rather
Right.
than to release an album with a lot of content. Because
Mhm.
if you can get one of those placements, that's huge. I mean,
Right.
it really can like kick off your career. It can change everything for you.
Right.
Um,
Right.
yeah. So I think that's a really big thing. Don't. It's honestly, it's really not that hard. Like
Yeah.
if you're not good at writing, there's a small part. I think it's you have like 500 characters or something to write
Yeah.
your pitch part. You know, get someone to help you with that. Get someone to review it, look it over, edit it. Honestly, it might be even worth it to just pay a writer like 10, 20 bucks to write it if that's really where you're at, if you
Right.
don't trust your writing at all.
Right.
Rather than just going in and being like, yo, this stuff is fire, put this on a playlist, because it's not
Like
going to happen.
I'd
Uh,
I'd actually love to be on the other end of that, like reading some of those pitches that they probably get, because there's probably like just yeah, but
oh,
yeah,
for sure, for sure. It,
yeah,
I'm sure it's so true. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, I think that's a huge thing,
for
definitely.
sure.
Um, and kind of the back end of that is that there are individually curated playlists on Spotify as well, and some of those do really well. Some of those have a lot of
Right,
followers. Obviously, they're a little bit harder to get in touch with, and those are definitely more so who do you know. But if you can make those
right,
connections with those people, if you can find those people, that's huge. Um,
right.
and I want to say, no, it wasn't. I don't remember who it was, but it was some band manager or something. Like they basically threw it, much larger band, like established band. They basically like threw a
Yeah,
party, I think, for like playlist owners. Like that is to the extent that some people will go to
right,
try and get favor, get to know people, and get their foot in the door to a
right.
playlist because it can be huge for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
and I think too, it's like you said, it's not necessarily like when you're releasing that music that you need to maybe try and build those relationships. It needs to be well in advance, because
yes,
so often it just comes off as like, hey, can you just do this for me?
yeah,
Well, or have you supported them? Like, what, you know what I mean? So you think
yeah,
in terms of them as well and what you can do for them, and you'll probably be a lot better off in those situations.
yeah,
But yeah, I think going back to what you're talking about with clout, I love talking about this topic, because I think it's such a big thing that people follow you for so many different reasons now. Like you said,
hmm
it's not just about music. Like you might just be funny, and people are like, "Hey, I
yeah,
want to follow this
fantastic.
person," right? It have nothing to do with your music, right? So when you're putting out your music, they really just don't care. Putting out merch, things like that. So to me, it's like, yeah, you have 20,000 followers, but do you want all of those followers who are just kind of clogging up, that list or whatever?
Yeah,
You want to get to those core people that actually are supporting you, right? So,
mhm,
um, and yeah, on top of that too is like there's just so many different avenues now. I think there were always many avenues before when it came to music and what you could do, but now it's just so rampant that like so many different options. Like people just do cover
mhm,
songs. People, there's just so many things that people can just focus on. I think how you're talking about strategizing. Oh, maybe if this is what you're trying to do, go the singles approach. Like I think it all comes back to having a plan and just figuring out
yes,
what it is you want out of everything, because you're just gonna get lost in lost in the sauce trying to attack everything, if you don't just narrow it down from the get go and really get tailored as to what your approach is. So, but yeah, do you have any other closing words of advice for artists? who are trying to, grow their careers or aspiring to do stuff with
Yeah,
music?
I mean, there's always, honestly, there's always more to be said. But the place that I really recommend people start out is, when you create that strategy or whatever, choose your
Mhm.
favorite social media site, whether that be Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever you go with.
Mhm.
Just basically
Right,
choose one and really try and invest time with that. Um, it's important to be consistent with your music. It's important to be consistent with your marketing. It's important to be
right,
consistent with getting out there, having good content. Um, so if you can choose a social media site and post something at least once a week, that's a great first step. Um,
right,
on two ends of the spectrum, don't be the perfectionist who only posts something once every 3 months and it's like an awesome picture. But
right.
you're not going to get much visibility. You're not
Traction.
going to get much engagement. And
Right.
also, don't be the person who posts every day like, "Yo, I'm eating a pancake," and it's like, I don't care.
Yeah. Right.
um, and use hashtags. If you're not using hashtags, I don't know. It's like, why not?
Right.
You can use up to 30 on Instagram. Type it out in your notes or something, and just copy and
Right.
paste it, and maybe change a little
Right.
bit of stuff. But if that's one more way to get followers, great, do it. You know, why
Right.
not? Um, utilize every tool that they give you. Put the location in there.
Mhm.
Talk with people. If people, oh man, this is another like from a marketing pet peeves, or it's not really marketing pet peeves. It's more of a marketing like bonus. Like if you're doing marketing right, this is what you do. You
Mhm.
reply to comments. Like
Right.
it's not hard at all, but
Right.
it's such a good habit. And if you become a big musician and you still reply to comments, you'll make someone's day. Like
Right.
I can say that from personal experience because I'm not trying to brag, but I once, commented on San Holo's music. He's a musician that I love. He's kind of like
Yeah.
a lo-fi EDM artist.
Gotcha.
And I know that he replies to like probably at least 20 people on each of his posts, which he'll get like 1,000 comments or something. But he
Right.
actually replied to one of my comments, and I told my friends about that
Right.
because I thought that was cool.
Right. Right.
And so establish those habits now of really caring about your people, because
Mhm.
like you were saying, if you care about them, they're going to care about you. Create that mutual
Exactly.
relationship and really build fans, not just
Right.
followers.
Right. Right. And that's too, like, there's so many like inexpensive and free way, like that doesn't cost
Ah,
you anything to do, right?
so true.
Another thing I had an experience with, an artist that I really love his music by the name is Zandy. When I first was introduced to him, he was just commenting on my stuff, and like we were just kind of going back and forth. And then out of the blue, like he sent me a voice memo DM, and it was the weirdest thing. I have never really received one of those. I was like, "What is going on here?" But that, like, for whatever reason, like that is just so much more personable. You're hearing
Hmm.
that person's voice, and artists can do that as well. Like you're talking to your fans literally, and
Yeah,
it's just
that's a
another
great idea.
connection, another layer of connection there too. Or even people putting their phone numbers out there. I know people sometimes just like create that relationship, texting their fans,
Hmm.
"Hey, you're in the line at the show. I'll get you in," come kind of thing. So, whatever you can do to better that experience or improve that. And like you're saying, like you're not necessarily talking to your friends about maybe the music per se, but that's going to branch in because you're having that conversation with your friends now about that experience you had. So that's cool. No, 100%. My last thing, and I'm curious about this, just I'm not from Houston or Texas there. What is it like marketing your music out there? Because to me, that seems like a big bustling city, or
Hmm.
Texas. And is it hard for artists to get their name out there, or is there a lot of opportunities? It's just kind of how you're, navigating it in
Hmm.
that regard. Because it seems like there's a ton of talent out there as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, big city, there's going to be, talent there, like you said. Absolutely. Definitely
Right,
true.
right,
It is definitely very competitive, especially in the
right,
rap scene. There are so many rappers in the Houston area, and
right,
it's a lot of the culture that's in the area, and it's excellent.
right,
But with that,
right,
there's a lot of competition there. So if you're just trying to be another rapper who posts, a music video every now and then, yeah, you're gonna have a really tough time. You gotta
Right,
differentiate yourself and make some part of you unique. Not so unique that people are thrown off by it, but unique enough that
right,
people will be like, this is different. I like this. I want to follow this person. So when you're talking
right,
about kind of the social media online presence, it is highly competitive.
right,
And it's things are kind of set up in this area mostly for hip hop and rap kind of music. There's a
right,
lot more clubs who want that type of music. There's a lot more open mics for stuff like that. Um,
right,
but those kind of less appreciated music styles. We've talked with a lot of like punk, rock, indie bands and stuff like that. They can really do well in an area like this as well because they don't have as much competition, but
right,
they're going to have a little bit harder time finding those venues who want to have them in, finding people
right,
who are interested in their music. But if you can do it right, and if you put
right,
in a little bit of time and really do the research in the Houston area, you can really do well because you
right.
don't need to be, you know, the best out of 500 people. That's not even accurate. There's way more than 500 rappers in Houston, but
Yeah,
you
yeah,
don't need to be the best out of 500 people. It's more like in comparison, you need to be like a decent artist out of like 50 people. So your chances
right.
are a lot better because it basically is differentiating themselves. That's a word that you're going to hear a lot with marketing stuff. But yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I think there's positives on either side of the coin because yeah, like if you are one of those bands or that aren't really in that, the rap spectrum, um, you can really still break through and stand out and maybe find your
Hmm.
people who actually resonate with you a lot more than someone who's seeing the same thing every time they go out kind of thing. So definitely a positive in that. And just from I've spoken with friends who've kind of made transitions where they go to like Nashville, for example, and
Hmm.
from where we're from, it's not necessarily as huge as a music place as obviously like a Nashville, but their sentiments to me has been going there is such a different environment because you're just forced to be at a higher level because there's so much competition.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
pushes you to be better. And kind of that, rule of what you're talking about, practicing every day, like you're just going at it every day. Whereas you come back to somewhere that maybe isn't like that and you're just kind of relaxed and get comfortable. And, I can just put out a few things here and there. People aren't pushing you as hard because there isn't that competitive nature. So,
Hmm.
definitely positives within all of that for sure. But no,
Yeah.
that's cool. I like to. I always heard of Houston and what it's like, but if someone who's in the thick of it, I'm happy to hear that the competition, but there's opportunity out there for sure. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, this has been a great chat. I'm glad
Absolutely.
we had you on today and got to learn more. Again, Artistic Elevation, go check them out. How can artists get in touch with you? What's the best way to contact you or come work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. We love to use Instagram. That's a pretty typical way that we talk with people. You can find us at ae.musicstudio, or, you can look us up online. We do have a website. And you can find us just by typing in Artistic Elevation.
Perfect. Perfect. Again, please go check them out. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Oh, same.
Excited to see
Absolutely.
more of, yeah, excited to see more from you and the work that you guys are doing with artists. And yeah, hopefully maybe have you on again for another chat sometime for sure.
Sounds great, man. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.